The courthouse was quiet that morning, almost too quiet for a city as restless as New Orleans. The kind of stillness that feels like something is about to break. Outside, the thick summer heat pressed down on the steps, and inside, the stale air of the courtroom clung to everything, the wood-paneled walls, the polished benches, the anxious breath of those waiting for the truth to finally come out. It was the first day of a trial that would tear a family apart. In the second row, Olivia sat with her hands clenched in her lap, staring at the empty witness stand. Her eyes were wide, dry, and focused. Not because she wasn't scared, but because she'd already cried all her tears. Next to her sat her mother, stone-faced, arms crossed tight like a barricade. No one in the family knew how to sit next to each other anymore. There were gaps on every bench where cousins and siblings used to fill in the spaces. But this wasn't about Olivia. Not directly, anyway. This was about her husband, Marcus. Marcus Langley had always been the kind of man who commanded a room without saying much. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't show his anger. His charm was quiet, controlled, the sort that made people listen even if they didn't know why. He wore his power the way some men wear expensive cologne, not in your face, but always lingering. To most people, he was a clean-cut business consultant. Grew up middle class, went to Tulane, married into a family a few steps above his pay grade, and worked his way up. Everyone assumed he was smart, careful, and steady. Olivia's parents had their doubts at first, but Marcus knew how to win people over. He always did. And yet, something about him never sat quite right with Olivia's cousin, Camille. Camille wasn't the kind of woman who kept her mouth shut when something didn't feel right. She was direct, too blunt sometimes, and not the kind of person you brought around company if you wanted everything to stay nice. She was also the only person in the family who ever seemed to look straight through Marcus. For years, that tension stayed buried. Family events were stiff. Smiles were forced. Camille would show up late, leave early, and never say much when Marcus was around. And Olivia, always caught between them, would pretend not to notice. She told herself it was just a personality clash. Not everyone gets along. And she'd chosen Marcus. She'd stood in front of a church full of people and said yes to him. That had to mean something. But there are silences that grow louder over time. There are things you feel in your gut long before you ever admit them out loud. The truth started to leak out in small, almost invisible ways. Late-night texts Olivia couldn't explain. Long phone calls that stopped when she walked into the room. A strange tension during last Thanksgiving, when Camille barely spoke a word and left without saying goodbye. Olivia didn't want to believe it. Not then. Not when she still had her home, her routine, her place in the world. She had no idea that. A secret older than her marriage had been living in her house the whole time. The courtroom was full that day. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder in the back rows, some already whispering headlines before the trial even started. What began as a simple civil dispute, a financial disagreement over a trust fund of all things, had turned into something much uglier when Camille dropped her counterclaim, a sexual relationship, emotional manipulation, threats, lies, the kind of things that pulled people out of their homes and made them line up outside a courthouse just to hear what happened. Marcus, sitting at the defense table in a perfectly pressed suit, looked calm. Too calm. He always did. The only sign that anything was wrong was the twitch in his jaw, a subtle tightening that Olivia used to find endearing. Now it made her stomach turn. She'd asked him months ago when Camille first went to a lawyer, "Is there something I should know?" He hadn't lied. Not exactly. He just didn't answer. "I don't know why she's doing this," he said, brushing a hand across her shoulder like it was all some annoying misunderstanding. "But you know how Camille is. She needs attention. That was all he gave her, and she accepted it, because she wanted to. Because it was easier to blame Camille than to believe her whole life was built on someone else's lie. Now the lie was on trial, and this courtroom, polished, proper, with its flags and oak benches, was about to become the setting for a truth too ugly to ignore. A truth about what happens when charm becomes control, when loyalty turns into silence, and when the past refuses to stay buried. The judge entered. The court stood. The trial of Marcus Langley had begun.